With After Effects open, I'm going to import the cars. I'll go to File Import or hit Command-I on the keyboard with the project window selected. And I'm going to click on the PSD to select it. And then I'm going to go down to where it says Import As. And instead of Footage, I'm going to choose Composition Retain Layer Size. And click OK. So we've got the composition with the cars. So if I were to double click on the little icon, that red, green, blue piece of film, all my layers are in the composition of 854 by 480. So if I was to go to composition settings, I can see that it's exactly what I want. I'm making the duration 6 seconds because bumper videos are usually no more than 6 seconds, sometimes 5, sometimes 3. So I'm going to click OK once I've set the duration. And now I'm going to change the background color. I'm going to go to Layer, New, Solid. I'm starting out with just a blue background. And I'll click OK. And I'd like that layer to be below the cars and the entire length of the composition. So I'll drag it down to the bottom in the layer area of the timeline. And I'll put my playback head at the end. And I'll select the background layer. And putting my cursor over the very edge, I can hold a shift and snap it to the end. Now we're going to line up the cars one after the other so that we have a kind of an even distribution and exchange of the cars over the 6-second duration. I'm going to select the top 2 layers and I'm going to make them 2.5 seconds long. Now, I've also based on my composition settings for 30 frames per second. It'll just be easier to do the math. So if you need to do that, go back to composition settings, and set your frame rate to 30. I'll punch in 2:15 in the time code in the right corner, and I'll select the top 2 clips. Holding the shift, I'll snap them so they're 2.5 seconds long each. Now we want the remaining 2 to be exactly 2 seconds long. So I'll go back to my time code and punch in 200. And holding the shift with both selected, I'll snap those 2 to the playback head. The 2 longer ones will serve as the first clip and one will serve as the last. So I'll just drag this down here to the end of my timeline and I'll drag it in the layer order down right above the blue background layer. Now we want to have each of these clips overlapping by 1 second. So I'll select the clip at the beginning and I'll go to the out point of that by holding the shift and snapping. And I'm going to back up to 1 second and 15 frames. So I'll put 115. And the second layer below, I'll snap that to the playback head. Now I'll put the playback head at the end of clip number 2. And I'm at 3:15. I'll go back to 2:15. And I'll snap the third clip to the beginning of the playback head. So now we've got it evenly distributed so that each car, once we're done, will be on screen approximately the same amount of time. I'd like to have transitions in between each of these cars. So if you recall, when we put transitions on our first portfolio tutorial, it had to take place on the top clip. So the transition will go on clip number 1. And I'm putting my playback head kind of in the middle of where the intersection of 1 and 2 are. With that clip selected, I'll go to Effects, Transitions, and I'm going to use a linear wipe for this. Now if I go up towards this linear wipe in the corner, I can now drag on the transition completion, just enough to see what the transition looks like. Now verticals are not really desirable in any kind of design, so with that little wheel I can change the angle of it. So I'll just give it a bit of a diagonal. I'll return the linear wipe completion to 0, putting the playback head at the beginning of clip number 2, with clip number 1 selected where the transition is, I'll drop the first keyframe on the stopwatch next to the word transition completion in the upper left-hand corner where my transition effect is appearing. I'll put my playback head at the end of clip number 1, and I'll make the transition completion 100. So if I were to drag through now, the car goes from green to red. Now we need to put a transition on clip number 2 as it transitions between 2 and 3. I'll put my playback head halfway through the area where they both intersect here. Going back up to effects, transitions, and I think I'm going to use CC JAWS. Now I talked about the use of transitions in our first project. In this particular instance, because it's kind of a colorful animation, these little things are acceptable. I'll go up to the completion, drag on it to see what it looks like, and once again I might put a diagonal, maybe in the other direction. I'll zero out the completion again. Putting the playback head at the beginning of clip number 3, I'll put the first keyframe for CC JAWS completion by clicking on the stopwatch. I'll put the playback head now at the end of clip number 2 and make the transition completion 100. So now if I was to drag through the first 2 clips, we've got 2 transitions. Now I'll put the transition between clip 3 and 4. And I'm placing it once again about halfway through the intersection of these 2 clips. And with the top clip number 3 selected, I'll go to Effects, Transitions, and I guess I'll use, in this instance, Grid Wipe. And I'll drag on the completion to see what this actually looks like. Alright, so placing my playback head now at the beginning of clip number 4. I'll put the first keyframe in for completion, and I'll put my playback head at the end of clip number 4 now, and I'll make the completion 100%. So if we were to play through now, we've got transitions going from each of these pictures to the other.